Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. There we go. It's about 2:01 p.m. We're going to go ahead and give another minute for those joining in. We have a good group of people today. My name is Grace, and I'll be your moderator. Good afternoon, everyone. You can say hi on the chat. I don't think we want to be too formal unless Shauna wants to be too formal, but I don't think so.
Absolutely not.
We love friends. So please say hi
Absolutely
in the
no
chat.
formal.
Don't be shy. We're a good group here. Hello, hello. Welcome to the afternoon session. We hope you had a good lunch and are not too sleepy or not too full. Awesome. Well, in interest of time, we're going to go ahead and get started. Once again, my name is Grace Nyanzui. I'm over here at the School of Medicine. I have the wonderful pleasure of introducing our guest speaker for today, who I've personally been to a couple of her sessions. I can definitely attest that she is a rock star. And so I'm excited about what she has to teach us today, if I may call it that. And her name is Seana Nuñez. If you don't know about Seana, you are in for a treat. She's pretty incredible. She is a senior consultant with over 15 years of experience in training, facilitation, organizational development, and consulting. She works with staff across all levels of UCR, with leaders across the UC system as a program manager and a facilitator of the UC Management Skills Assessment Program. Ms. Seana is highly involved with UCR Staff Assembly for over several years. She has served on the board and continues to participate in various committees. She was the recipient of the Staff Who Make a Difference Award Professional in 2020 and the CU CSA Kevin McCauley Memorial Outstanding Staff Award in 2021 for her dedication in working with and for staff. She has worked at UC Riverside from 2004 to 2006, where she assisted with compensation, recruitment, and training. She then again returned in 2007, where she has been in employee and organizational development unit ever since. Over the years, Shauna has facilitated the new staff orientation, sessions on performance management, and has been involved with recruitment and selection. She also manages campus cohort programs, and she currently facilitates various courses in person and virtually, including the Franklin Covey 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and Leading at the Speed of Trust. She holds a master's degree in industrial organizational psychology and is certified to administer various personality and behavior assessments, including the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator. With that being said, everyone, give a round of applause, boo, 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 yay, 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 to Shauna and take it away. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. I'll be monitoring them or in the Q&A. And I believe at the end, if we do have time, if Shauna is open to it and you want to ask it live, we can also open that opportunity for you as well. So whenever you're ready, Shauna, we are ready as well.
Thank you so much, Grace, for that introduction. I appreciate it. Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is our really last session of the day. We're almost through day one of our staff conference. I hope you have enjoyed it so far. I think this is our 5th year, and so every year we get even more and more excited. So hopefully you've enjoyed the conference so far. So the session today, well, this particular session is kind of a tease. And I know it's frustrating to have kind of a tease, but this session is about change, and it's called How to Turn Uncertainty into Opportunity. And I call it a tease because it's giving you a taste of the actual full-length course that we offer. It's one of our Franklin Covey offerings. It's brand new that we just added to our catalog. You can enroll in the UC Learning Center, and you're getting a taste of it today. So we're going to give you kind of an overview of what change is and how to manage through change. But to get the full scope, you'll have to enroll in the class. You've got to enroll for more. So that's why I call it a tease. But Having said that, I think you're going to get some really just solid basic information on change and managing through change for yourself today. So we're going to start with our question. I want to ask you to type your responses to this question that you have in the chat. I'm going to give you a few seconds to do so. Pretty much when I put the question up on the screen, what I want you to put in the chat is your immediate knee-jerk reaction, what immediately comes to mind, okay? So here's the question. How do you feel when change happens to you? So Fast and Furious in the chat, how do you feel when change happens to you? No, that was the first one I saw, Mia. That was hilarious. Oh gosh, that was very funny. Scared, a lot of no, stressed, anxious, annoyed, out of sorts. Good. Surprise. Okay, now what? Gross. That's funny. Yes. So what we're seeing just in this very quick exercise, it's not necessarily positive. And the question we have to start asking ourselves is why? Why is it that when we are faced with change, our immediate knee-jerk reaction is overwhelmingly, just from the chat, negative? We do have a couple that are kind of more on the positive side. Someone's excited. I see a let's go, or because I watch K-dramas, I translate that into my head now as Kaja. If you watch K-dramas, you know, if you know, you know. So yeah, some people get really excited about change and like, Kaja, let's do this, let's go, I'm excited. And a lot of people though are afraid. They're apprehensive. They're stressed out. Why? And when we think about change, one of the things that can help us manage through change and manage through a lot of these negative emotional reactions that we get to change is to remember specifically this. As humans, we are wired to react to and to survive change. We are adaptable. That is one of the most beautiful things about the human experience, is that we adapt so well. I went to a conference several years ago, and one of the keynote speakers, who was amazing, talked about how as kids, we deal with change constantly. And children, when you see them, for the most part, children deal with change pretty well, outside of, yes, there might be some neurospicy things that can happen. But overall, kids are really good about dealing with change. Think about it. Every year we have to change with our kids. We get a new teacher. We have new curriculum. Sometimes we're sitting next to somebody new and in our classroom. We change sports. We, as kids, we change playmates. We change video game. We change all sorts of things when we're children, and kids kind of just roll with it. It's as we get older that all of a sudden we begin to fear it. Think about how many children manage through moving. They change schools. They have to change their complete friend groups. Younger children tend to manage through this a little bit easier. It's when they get older, all of a sudden it's more stressful. And as we get to be adults, it gets even more stressful. We don't like it. Changing a pen. Look, I have my favorite brand of pen. It's the RSVP. The pink one's the best. Purple's a very close second. But if I have to change my pen, I don't like it, and my day is ruined if I can't find my pen. So as we get older, all of a sudden, we forget how adaptable we really are and how we are really made to handle and survive change. So we have 5 common reactions to change. The first one is to just, we get into action immediately. We move. We know the change, what the change is. We know it's coming, and we immediately jump into action to kind of facilitate that change and just get going. Let's get to it. But we have some other reactions that aren't necessarily as positive. We can also minimize. We change as little as possible. I know I have to deal with this change, but I want to make sure that I am having to change as little as possible because I really don't want to deal with it. We can wait. I know this change is coming. How long until I have to do something with this change? I'm going to wait and see what happens with everyone else. I'm not going to do anything until I'm absolutely forced to, until other people change first, and then I'm going to change. We can resist it. And this one can get to be a little bit frustrating. especially for those of you who are excited about the change and think it's fabulous. And then you have those who are actively fighting against it. I'm resisting it. I don't want this to happen. I hate it. I'm going to fight it as much as possible. And there are some cases where you fight it and you can actually stop the change from happening. But think about how many changes we've had to deal with just at UCR in the past 5-10 years. I won't start naming some of them because people will start to twitch. But we had some very big initiatives that have happened, and we've had people actively resisting it and fighting against it, and they really didn't have enough power to stop it. But there have been some changes where things have been walked back, and the change was started and we tried it, and because of the reaction, we went back to something else because that change just didn't work. But when we resist it, it's because typically we dislike it. And then we can start having other people rally around us. I don't like this change. I'm going to start coalition building and get you to fight against this change with me. We can also quit. Quitting is always an option. And I know a lot of people don't want to hear that, but opting out and quitting is an option. If I don't like the change enough, I can opt out and say, nope, this is not for me. I'm good. Goodbye. Or we can stay and not engage at all. So we have these options. Viva la resistance, yes. Yes, viva la resistance. So we have these options, but again, the challenge is, why are we afraid of the change? What does change look like? So if you attended Andrew Larrett Smith's chat earlier, and he always throws this quote out, and I love it so much because it's true. All models are wrong, some models are helpful. We're going to introduce you to a model of change. And there is so much research out there in the social sciences around change, how humans react to change, how to move through change. This is one of several. This is the one Franklin Covey has chosen to use. We're going to introduce you to it today. And it's going to talk about the various stages of change. Now that we know what our reactions can be, we can start thinking about, based on this model, where are we in a change in our lives, and how can we get to a mind space where we are active in the change, so it's not just necessarily happening to us, but we are motivated to move through it and be successful. So I'm going to play a video. It's called The Change Model. And as you watch, think about a possible change that you are dealing with currently. It could be in your personal life or your professional life. Where are you when it comes to dealing with this change? Where are you on the model with the change that you've identified? Here we go. Let's take a look at the change model.
The world is full of change. Some changes go pretty well, maybe even great. Others, not so much. Most fall somewhere in between. While every change is unique, all change follows a predictable pattern. This pattern is called the change model. It shows what individuals and organizations experience during times of change, and it helps you understand where you are and what to do next to turn the uncertainty of change into opportunity. Here's how it works. The line on the left, that's results. Financial, productivity, personal satisfaction, whatever result you may want. The line running left to right, that's time. It's divided into 4 zones. The first, the zone of status quo, is where you are before the change. Here you feel pretty comfortable. It's business as usual. Then change happens. Maybe it comes from someone else, or maybe from something beyond your control. Maybe you chose the change. No matter what caused it, change pushes you from status quo into the zone of disruption. Here, results begin to suffer because all changes rewrite the rules of the game. The zone of disruption feels uncomfortable at best and downright miserable at worst. So, what helps you get out of the zone of disruption? You do. If you resist, ignore, or just don't understand the change, chances are you'll stay in the zone of disruption until you see what's changing and why. Connecting with others to get clear on what and why helps you decide what you're going to do. And deciding is important. Why? Because when you decide, it becomes your change. Once across the point of decision, you enter the zone of adoption, where you adapt to the new rules of the change. You'll need to stop doing some things and you'll need to start doing others. In the change model, the line looks nice and smooth. In reality, it might look a bit more like this. The zone of adoption is where most changes fail, because setbacks and mistakes might leave you feeling overwhelmed, confused, frustrated. But revisit the point of decision, your own reasons to keep working through change, and you might also feel optimistic, driven, ready to persist. You might feel all these things, maybe even in a single day. When you start getting the results you want and your energy shifts away from adapting and towards success, you enter the zone of innovation. There you feel invigorated. You explore new opportunities, maybe opportunities you never even imagined. Because change isn't just about results. It's about creating new possibilities. But some changes never quite get to the zone of innovation. Instead, they peter out, settling back into the status quo. Or worse, they never get out of disruption. When that happens, the change has cost you without offering any benefit. So learn the change model. Use it at work, at home, for yourself or your team, wherever you can turn change to your advantage.
So I did not contact my friends at Franklin Covey and say, hey, by the way, I think we have this thing going on campus. Could you make a change video? Because it's really going to work. I did not do that because of Oracle, which was very funny. I saw that and started laughing. So couple of takeaways from this video that I really want y'all to think about. Change can happen to you. Absolutely. There are things that have happened on campus. Like I said, I wasn't going to call anything out because I didn't want the twitches to start. Things can happen to you that you don't agree with, that you're not okay with, you weren't on board with, you weren't asked about. We all have a decision to make whether or not we are going to get on board with the change or not. So remember that point of decision in the video. That is where we are choosing to engage with the change. We can choose not to. But remember, that is a choice. The other thing I want you all to remember is this is not about but they didn't and but they, no. Using the information really is about how are you managing the change for yourself, and possibly how do I lead others. This isn't about what does someone else need to do and how do I change their behavior to make it easier for me. Because unfortunately, as I always tell people, my magic wand broke. And no matter how many times I wave it in the air and say, Wingardium Leviosa, nothing happens. We can't change the behavior of others. All we can do is manage how we react to the change ourselves and how we communicate. So if you find yourself in a situation where the change is happening to you, one of the things you can choose to do is ask questions. Ask as many questions as possible. One of the things we tell leaders is to be transparent, but sometimes they're not, and we can't force that. You can ask questions though, so that it can make your point of decision easier to get to, so that you can choose to engage with the change. Or maybe the information you get makes you say, you know what, this is not for me, I'm opting out. So the change model was all pretty in the video, right? But it can look like what you see on the screen. It can be a big hot mess. The status quo can drop off really quickly. The zone of disruption and adoption can be really, really long or really, really short. We can get to innovation really, really fast, or it might take a long time to get there. So that model is just a kind of a visual way of helping you understand where might I be, but don't consider it as every change is going to take the same amount of time in each of the zones. We can take longer in disruption to get to adoption. Disruption can be very, very short. Adoption can be long, and then we get to finally innovation, or it can be the other way around. So we're not looking at it as perfect segments of time, but we're looking at it as, again, for each change, where am I? So we start with the zone of status quo. This is where we're preparing. Rather than avoiding the idea that change is going to happen, because newsflash, change is happening all the time. We don't wait for it. We don't want to be caught off guard. So we're constantly preparing. What could change? What things do we foresee in the future? What can we do differently? Then we get to the zone of disruption. Here we're clarifying, we're asking questions. Why is this change happening? How is this going to impact me? What do I need to do differently moving forward? We get as much information as possible, because getting that information might be what helps us get through the insecurity and the fear that we have around the change. Oftentimes, change is scary because it's unpredictable and we don't have enough information. Getting information can make us feel more secure in the change that we're dealing with, which also gets us to that point of decision faster, where we're committing to the change and we're building our confidence that, yes, we can do this and we can be successful. I know once we get to adoption, it might be messy, but we need to persist through it. Because when we get to adoption, we might deal with setbacks, but we don't give up because we want to get to innovation. So we're going to take a look at each of these and look at some things that we can do in each zone, starting with status quo, where we're preparing. What are trends, patterns, and plans? And one of my examples that I love using for this is, okay, don't start throwing tomatoes at me. For those of all who've been here long enough, you see path. I don't start ducking. But yes, UC Path was a very interesting change that UCR went through. And one of the challenges I think that we dealt with is because not enough people were told the real reasons behind why we had to do this switch. I know there was all this talk about UC just wants to get on one system, right? I think that was like the main talking point that everyone was going with. The zombie hydrant. Thank you for that visual, Heather. Yes. So a lot of people on campus were told we just want to get on one system, which was part of the story, but not all of it. A bigger piece that very few people talked about was that the systems we were using were so old that the individuals who had written the code for them and could, fix things and keep them updated, those people were retiring and the systems were breaking. And there was literally no way for us to continue using these old, outdated systems that we no longer even had people in the professional realm to fix. So when we start looking at things like scanning trends, patterns, and plans, this is something that we saw coming or should have seen coming and been discussing long before they decided to do UC Path. They should have been very transparent about that. But this was something that should have been on the radar. So if you are proactively, I should say, scanning for things on the horizon that could change, it can mitigate the surprise. If you're communicating that to your teams, it can mitigate the surprise. So we're looking at trends in our field of work. What are some of the things that are happening that are probably going to trickle down and impact us so that we're not caught off guard? Asking for the perspective of others. And then we act to get better organized. All these things can help you have the right mindset to say, change is always going to come. How do I move through my job, move through the work I do so that I'm not always caught flat-footed? Once we know the change is happening, that's where we get to that zone of disruption. And so here's where we need to start clarifying. But we also have to recognize that this comes with a dip in results. There's no way around this. So again, don't throw tomatoes at me. When we switched over with the Impact 23, and we're still, I think, in this zone of disruption and adoption with this, because not everything is perfectly online yet. We are having to go from using software that we used to use to using something different. There's a learning curve. There is the learning curve going from using FAUs to COAs. That's been fun, said no one. But I mean, even having to change language, I'm still using the phrase FAU. I probably will for a long time, because guess what? I've been here for almost 17 years. It's been FAU for 17 years. It's going to take me a minute to switch. And I'm not a financial person. I am just the one who asked for FAUs from my admin because I need to order something for a class. It's going to take me a minute to switch my language. I can't imagine what our financial teams are dealing with, having to completely switch software. I've heard from some of them, There were tears and probably wine involved. CY, yes, Trina. It's like, wait, CYA, wait a minute. Yes, I had that happen to me too. But I can't imagine what our financial analysts dealt with. Having to switch systems, switch language, switch processes. So absolutely there was going to be a dip in results because it takes time. We're just now getting to the point where we can start doing recharges. That took a long time to come back online. That's a dip in results. It's inevitable. We might increase the time it takes to do work because, again, we had to learn something new. So whatever our expectations were in the past, we need to throw those out of the window. We have a completely new landscape that we're dealing with. We cannot operate the way we did before, and we can't have the same expectations we did in the past either. These really fast turnaround times that we dealt with when it was the COA system, whatever that, no, the FAU system, something called the trees. I don't even know. I just remember trees. Like I said, I'm not a financial person. There were some trees. I don't even know if that tree thing is still in use. I couldn't tell you. But people are going to mess up more because they're learning something different. It's a completely new language. It's a completely new landscape. And I remember when I was asking for, having to ask for COAs for a program I manage, and all the fields, and someone was asking me, what do these fields mean? And I was like, you are asking entirely the wrong person. Please don't, because even the field names change. It's a completely different language. Yes, you switched to speaking Greek mid-sentence. That is an excellent analogy, Eric. Yes. We were speaking a language and all of a sudden we paused for a second and now we're speaking Greek. I don't know, for those of you who have ever tried to learn a language that does not use Latin characters, I mentioned earlier, I watch K-dramas. I've tried to figure out some Korean, it's literally the same thing. It's like my brain now has to switch and I don't know what I'm seeing. I don't understand what I'm hearing. Mid-sentence, as I was doing something, we switched languages that fast. So yes, I'm going to make mistakes. We are all going to make mistakes. Things are going to take longer. We cannot have the same expectations of work turnaround. Oh, we've got people actually trying to learn Greek. Okay. Our results are going to decrease. And this is an area that can get very frustrating because now it can start impacting trust. So when we couldn't process recharges, we are waiting and waiting and waiting. And I am sure the people who are responsible for those systems were getting nasty grams in the email, people getting angry because the systems aren't working. It's impacting trust. But if we can take a step back and recognize, I'm going to go back a couple slides here. Nope. We're in this zone of disruption where all of these things are shifting and changing and everyone's trying to learn and keep up with it. If we can take a step back and realize, where are we? We can have some grace for the people who are also trying to work through it, because the different results, it's not their fault, but we're in the middle of trying to work through a change. When you're looking at your personal life, you can feel frustrated and overwhelmed. You can have low morale and confidence. You can have lost sleep, not personal life, sorry, but personally, you can feel all of these emotions when you're going through a change. Even when it's at work, I can feel overwhelmed and I can feel like my morale is slipping and I can lose sleep because I'm trying to think at night, oh my gosh, what are all the things I have to do tomorrow to help manage this new system we're dealing with? And I got to answer all these emails from people angry because they can't process recharges. And all these people need new accounting strings because they were using FAUs and now they all need new COAs. And we've got this huge list of needs and wants and demands. And I'm still learning the system, by the way. Now I'm losing sleep. I don't want to do this change anymore. I'm opting out. I quit. I have no idea if we lost people because of this change, but it's a very real, valid thing that can happen. So as you are moving through a change, especially when you get to that zone of disruption, we want to have you think about a couple of things. This is our circle of concern and our circle of influence. If you've taken Franklin Covey's 7 Habits for Highly Effective People, this will look very familiar. There are things that impact us that we have no control over. And there are things that impact us that we can absolutely influence. So in the case of, for example, the financial systems, the fact that they were changing the financial systems, we had no control over that. But we do have control over the learning of the system and how much we are engaging with it and whether or not we opt in or out. So software complexity. We have no control over that. They're getting the software from somewhere else, but we do have control over the ability to learn the software. Are we taking the time to learn the software? Are we going through the training required to learn the software? How much am I, where's my expertise level on this software? All of this, again, can cause a whole plethora of emotions: frustration, angst, anxiety. Some people can get excited. Some people can be really, really skeptical and sometimes fearful during this zone of disruption. And the wording to me is so spot on because everything is really disrupted. And it's not just the financial people. We were disrupted. A lot of places were disrupted, and we are way downstream from this. I don't understand all the ins and outs. There were disruptions that we dealt with because of this. So disruption is very, very real. So once you get to that point of decision, you choose to engage with the change, you get the information you need to understand why is the change happening. And that is so huge, to understand the why. I think so often changes fail because the why is not communicated. And I think if leaders communicated the why more often, getting people to understand this is not just arbitrary, it's not just because I felt like it, there's a really good reason, here it is. Let me get your input. What do you think? We'd have a lot more people willing to engage in the change. But once you make that decision, at that point of decision, we get to that zone of adoption where we're persisting through all the challenges and all the messiness. Now remember, you see this lovely curved line, but in the video, it didn't necessarily look like that, did it? It can look like this. We're forwards, backwards, inwards, outwards, bottom to the top. We are all over the map when we are trying to adopt. Because as we go through it, we try things and whoopsie doodle, that didn't work. We're set back, we need to try something else. Oh, that really worked, we're 2 steps forward. Oh, whoops, we made another mistake. We gotta kind of figure that out. Changes can fail here because it's hard. Because again, we're still making mistakes. We're learning from those mistakes. But the thing to remember is when we're going through a change, especially at work, we're going through it together. Having that patience is going to get us a long way to getting through the messiness of this change. We're going to have obstacles. We can't get around them. Any change, even if it's something you're really, really excited about, there's going to be obstacles. It's just how it happens. So when we are in this zone of adoption, where we're dealing with trying to do things differently, we are dealing with successes, we're dealing with setbacks, we're dealing with new information getting thrown at us that we then have to incorporate, and having to do things differently and step sideways and then step back and all sorts of the things. We have to have patience with ourselves and patience with those around us, especially those who are at the front line of those changes. We don't want to give up. We persist because we're going to continue that course of action despite the difficulty, despite the opposition. And sometimes, yes, a change can have the best of intentions and still fail. But we still persist. So in the chat, I'm going to put another question up on the screen. In the chat, same thing we did before, Fast and Furious, what comes to mind? Here's the question. What helps you persist despite the obstacles you deal with when it comes to facing a change? What helps you persist through that zone of disruption and getting through that zone of adoption? Yes, it is honest. I need my paycheck. Yes. I'm not mad at it. I'm not mad at it. Okay, yeah. So that tenacity, good. The why, good. Reaching out to others, understanding it, getting information, good. Focus on the end results, good. Oh, I love that. Imagining the good outcomes, imagining where we can be if we can just get through this. Motivation, good. Got to do it. Talking to others, perspective, yes, yes. Good, good. These are excellent. Hey. So once we get through the messiness of the disruption, the dip from disruption, the messiness of adoption, we get to that point where we finally feel like we've succeeded. This feels like the new normal. I've got this. I've got experience in it now. It doesn't feel like it's constantly hard. I kind of got myself into a groove. Now we're in that zone of innovation where we can explore. We can explore now that we feel stable. We feel stability again. We've got maybe better results than we did before, and it requires a lot less work and effort to maintain where we are now, maintain and sometimes get even better quality of work. But we don't return to the old status quo, right? We now have a new status quo. Once we get to that point where we are stable, that is now status quo. But guess what? Remember from the very beginning, status quo, there can still be a change that happens, and then we have another dip. So our new normal after innovation, where we feel stable, we feel like we've been successful, once that becomes a new status quo, we always have to have in the back of our minds, another change can still happen. So we may end up going right back through the model again, because change is constant. The one thing, death, taxes, and change are the three things in life that you know you're going to have to face. Death, taxes, and change. There's change constantly. So some things to remember. And remember I asked you, where are you in a change that you're dealing with, either personal life or professional life? Some things to remember for each zone. When you're in status quo, whether it's where you are now or that status quo you end up in after you've implemented a change, you've got to that innovation, things are stable, and now that's the status quo. Wherever your status quo is, prepare. Don't avoid the idea of change, because change is going to happen. There's no getting around it. If you're in that zone of disruption before you get to your decision point, clarify. Don't procrastinate. Get as much information as you can so you can clarify what's changing, why it's changing, how is this change going to impact me? What do I need to do differently to help make this change successful, so that we can get to that point of decisions that you can then engage in the change. If you're in that zone of adoption, persist. Don't give up. Keep asking questions. Keep revisiting the why. Keep looking for that perspective. Keep looking for that motivation. Keep imagining those positive outcomes. Keep that tenacity, because eventually you will get out of the messiness of that zone of adoption and get to that innovation, where then you can explore different possibilities, explore what may change next. You don't settle into status quo, because the whole thing can start over. You don't want to get caught flat-footed. So when you're in innovation, you celebrate the success you've had, but you're also having an eye toward what might change next. What can I improve here? We're settled and stable, but are there improvements that can still be made? Is that going to lead to another change? So we have introduced you broadly to the change model. Remember, I told you it was a tease, because there's a lot more to this. And if you want more, we have a class for that. We actually have 2 of them. We have a change course for individual contributors that really focuses on how you can manage change for yourself and get to that point in the decision where you're choosing to engage. We also have a change course for leaders, people who are leading a change implementation, leading a team, what have you, to help leaders lead their teams through a change. So both need to recognize what's changing and why, but leaders have a little bit more responsibility when it comes to trying to lead a team and lead others through a change. And so that second class really is for our leaders. Either you're leading a team, a project, what have you, to what skills can you build to help lead a team through change. They are available in the UC Learning Center, and our fabulous Joanna Van Brockland, who is here. Joanna, I'm so glad you're here. She's our newest EOD team member, and she's amazing. She is actually our facilitator for our change courses. So both of those, I believe, are in the UC Learning Center. Joanna, am I correct about that? They're both up and ready for enrollment?
Yes, and the communication will be going out soon. So hopefully join EOD's listserv and you'll get that information right to your inbox. Thanks for promoting, Seana.
Oh, you mean this listserv? That one? Yeah, that one. EOD has a listserv, so feel free to email our listserv to sign up. And if once you do, you will get our monthly communications on all new things EOD, and you will also get notified when we have things like new classes or we have any promotions that we have. We don't spam email you, don't worry. The PD monthly comes out once a month, and we may send a couple other things if we have special announcements or notices. So we don't spam your inbox, but feel free to sign up for our newsletter to stay on top of all news EOD. So hopefully what we talked about today, the change model, the change curve, can kind of give you a little bit of perspective on where am I in a change and what are some of the mindsets I need to have that are going to hopefully help me navigate that change successfully. And again, as I mentioned, if you want more, because there was not nearly enough time to do the whole class, because otherwise I would have, feel free to enroll in one of our Franklin Covey Change How to Turn Uncertainty into Opportunity courses available in the UC Learning Center. Alrighty, and with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And we're going to see if we have any questions in the chat. I have not been keeping up with everything in the chat, so I don't know.
We don't have a question, but I believe Christy was just making a comment saying that it's all very true, and communication, both internal and external, mitigates the difficulties and delays and the resulting distrust / frustration / etc. of the new system, and impact to our vendors and staff having to deal with that.
I completely agree with you. And as I mentioned earlier, and I talk about this in any class I facilitate, what we talk about is not, people always want to say, well, how do I get my manager to do this? I'm like, well, tell them to come to class. What you do. It's not about changing other people's behavior. It really is about giving you all tools and behaviors to learn, and then things that you can then model. But we can't change other people. Unfortunately, we can't change how things are communicated from the top. What you can do is, how are you communicating? If you are a leader, especially, how are you communicating with your team? How are you leading the teams through huge changes? How are you communicating? How much transparency are you offering? And if you are an individual contributor, you can control, am I asking questions? Am I sharing that information with others? How am I choosing to engage in this, or am I resistant? And if so, why? What do I need in order to engage with the change? All right, I see Trina's hand up. Go ahead.
Hi, it's nice to see you again. I wanted to just make a comment about the Berkeley People Management Program that I've been participating in. And I know that that's something that your office has been really great about communicating. I just wanted to kind of give a plug for that program because it's amazing. I'm not in a leadership position, but I'm learning a ton of stuff there about just getting along with groups and how to model good behavior. But anyway, I also wanted to comment on your slide about adoption versus adaption. I put something in the chat about it, and I apologize if I missed any comments that you made, but I think that's really important because a lot of us think, oh, it's just a change and I just got to think differently, to make my thinking differently a thing, instead of like really adopting that change and making it a part of your everyday life and resisting it all the way to the end of whatever place you're going to start your innovation. but I mean, we all have to deal with that because if you're an advisor, you know, Banner has been here with us since like 2016, but we're still not at that place of innovation with it. And changes are coming, even more changes are coming because we were at the mercy of the vendors that we use to provide these systems. So anyway, I just think that was an interesting perspective that you had on saying I'm adopting this change instead of adapting to the change. So thank you.
Thank you for that, Trina. Thank you. All right, anything else in the Q&A that I missed?
We have nothing in the Q&A
Okay.
and nothing else in the chat. So at this time, if anyone has any questions, comments, just like Trina did, please feel free to ask them now.
Yes, Latoya.
Yes, Latoya.
Hi, my friend.
Hi, Seana. I had a question because when you mentioned earlier, like asking questions because we really need to understand the why. But I think sometimes when I ask questions, it gets taken as a way like I'm not on board with the change. So is there like a way or some advice you could give to those of us in a way that we can ask questions to show that, hey, I want to be on board, but I just really need to understand the why before we can move forward?
Well, I think part of what you said is perfect. I want to be on board and I am wanting to support it, and it would be helpful for me to understand more behind the why. So is that something you can share?
Okay.
Because I'm really curious. I would really like to know about the why. Just so I can better be prepared and better support the change.
Okay. Yeah, I think sometimes I just jump in and ask questions without saying like, hey, the reason I'm asking.
I know it can kind of feel like, oh my God, why do I have to give a reason? But if you're afraid that your questions may be taken wrong and the why behind your questions, the motivation might be questioned about why you're asking, that is a great way to say it. You know what? I'm so on board with this and I really want to be supportive and I want to help the team be successful with this change. Can you share more about the why? Because that's really going to help me clarify the perspective and make sure that what I'm doing is going to help us be as successful as possible. Just giving that kind of intention, clarifying your intent, signaling what my intent is behind asking can go a long way into helping others say, oh, it's not because she's being difficult. It's really because she's wanting to understand to be supportive.
Right. Thank you. I agree with Trina too. Sometimes they don't know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Trina, you are absolutely right. Sometimes we ask and the answer is, I'm not sure. Does that mean we stop asking?
I think that's what Latoya is talking about too. Like sometimes people get defensive when they don't know the answer. And so people have to kind of change their attitude too and say, you know what, I don't really know, but let's explore that. And that's something that I think leadership should be willing to say, hey, I don't know either. So why don't we talk more about that? Yeah.
Well, it's okay to say you don't know.
Yes, absolutely. That is something I think leaders need to remember. It is okay to say, I don't know, as long as you can follow it up with, I'm going to find out.
Yeah.
It is okay to not have all of the answers, as long as you say either, I can't share that right now, because sometimes that's the case. I can't share that right now. I will when I can. Or I don't have that information yet. Let me follow up and I'll get back to you as soon as I do. So again, we can't fuss at other people for how they behave. My magic wand broke. I can't whack them over the head with it and say, do better. But what you can do, especially if you are leading others through a change, this is how you can interact with them when they ask questions. If they're asking the questions, don't get defensive because they don't know. And B, if you don't know the answer, be transparent and say, you know what, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I've even thought about that. Let me go ahead and write that down and I will get back to you as soon as I have an answer for that.
Yes. We have another question in the Q&A from Heather Donovan, who says, hi, I'm looking at the learning and development site. Is this one of the ones suggested, the e-course on facilitating sustainable change? I think there will be an opportunity for change between my department and another that I act as a liaison. Is there a resource for helping build an effective plan for us from status quo now to a more effective status quo?
Okay, let me go to the Q&A so I can make sure I'm understanding the question. Okay.
And Donovan, Miss Donovan, Heather, you can also ask it live.
Hi there.
Okay, so this is the Franklin Covey courses that I mentioned, the two new ones. That is not this e-course. It is something different.
Okay. Well, please forgive me.
That's okay.
I usually try to sit back and let the UCR folks ask questions because I'm actually at UCSE.
Oh, okay.
Y'all were recommended to us by one of my SAB colleagues. So I've heard really good things. Plus, I know some faculty down there. So hello, Riverside.
Hi, welcome.
I'll try to send you some of our nice waves. So anywho, the situation for us early on when you were describing this, you were saying sometimes it's best to prepare and anticipate. And I am foreseeing a situation in which, I mean, part of it could be scary and defensive of like, well, that's work I do. But I think that there's more of an opportunity of saying, well, great, if you want to offer to take on some of these tasks, and then together we can come up with a more effective way of suiting, coming up with responses and policies and procedures and be able to better support folks. Let's do something new. But I don't have the Covey e-courses to look at. I was just looking at our training and development.
Okay, so I would suggest, because I don't know what's in your catalog at your location.
Okay.
I would strongly suggest reaching out to your L&D team.
Okay.
And see what courses are available that can help you manage through that.
All right, thank you. Yeah, we actually do borrow from other departments. I've seen a couple from Berkeley, for example. So I was just hoping that maybe I was just finding it, but with a different title.
Yeah, this one, the Franklin Covey, this is not something that we are sharing with other locations. So I would say, yeah, tap into your L&D and see what you can borrow from other locations. And
totally makes sense. And a little side note, seeing as how we have roller coasters around here, and I recognize that little whoa, no, yay pattern. It's good to remember that you're not in the car alone.
No, you're not.
A lot of other people there on the ride, and hopefully if you can kind of talk to one another about it and how to be more effective about it, at least in my experience, it's a lot less scary.
Absolutely.
Still inducing vertigo sometimes, but a lot less scary.
But you're not by yourself, and there actually might be a whole other car coming behind you that you haven't even thought about yet, who's going to be going through the same thing. And sometimes you're on a different roller coaster.
Yeah. Or at least feel, at a different place on it.
Yes,
like, you're going down, but that's pushing somebody else up, and you just have to remember that the goal is for everybody to have a good ride.
Yes, so you're not by yourself. And that's why I mentioned earlier, when the change is frustrating for you, having grace for others, because if I'm frustrated that I can't process a recharge right now, I can't imagine how my financial team feels because the financial system is not working.
Oh, I could tell you, but previous gig was in accounting. So yeah, as soon as I see certain phrases, it's like, no, but I wasn't alone. I was with a team. When we did some changeovers, we worked on it together, and we, tried to figure out more effective ways of doing it. And then there was one thing when you were talking about it, when you come to a new status quo, I think sometimes it's good to remember that sometimes that status quo, the new one that you eventually just get comfortable in, is still a step up from wherever you were before.
It might take us a while to get to that point where it is actually better, but it could actually be better.
Yeah. I mean, I know folks that still won't use email. It's like, why not? It's super effective. Or Zoom, or a lot of other things that nowadays most folks look at and say, oh yeah, that's easy. Just do this. So.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But thank you again for investing so much time in these great resources. Oh, will there be links at the end? I think Grace said yes.
Yes. To what?
It should be shared. I believe the UC Staff Assembly uploads them. I know it goes on to our UC Learning Center, but for our folks who are joining from other UCs, we might need to tap in with the UC, with the Staff Assembly, the UCR Staff Assembly, to see how we can get those resources available for you.
Oh, for the recordings?
Correct. The recording, the
yeah.
PowerPoint,
I
for
don't have an
reference.
answer to that. Yeah, we'd have to talk to, there's a couple, Brittany and Melanie, to see
Correct.
what will that look like. Yeah. So if we can get the recordings out to our other location participants, then we will do so. But we'll have to, I think, investigate that a little bit, because I don't know how that part will work.
Sweet.
Yes.
Yeah. I usually try to really focus on what you all are saying instead of getting lost in the forest or the weeds, trying to write down every single screen or slide. I tell myself, oh, they'll tell me later. So
Yes.
thank you both.
And Heather, if you don't mind just shooting me your email via chat, just send it to me. So that way, when I do get that answer for you, I can go ahead and just contact you directly, or any other UC folks that have joined us from outside. But I believe for our UCR team, these should be available at the UC
Yes.
Learning Center, unless I'm misunderstood.
No, you didn't. All of the recordings will be uploaded into the UC Learning Center. I don't know when that will be done, because that's some work that has to happen on the back end. But yes, they will eventually all be in the UC Learning Center for our UCR participants.
Yes. Awesome. Well, we had a great session here with Miss Seana. Everybody give Miss Seana a round of applause. Woo, woo, woo. Don't be a
Thank
hater.
you,
Give her a
everyone,
round of
and thank
applause.
you for your participation and your fabulous comments, because that's really what makes this session lively and engaging. I can't have an engaging session if y'all aren't participating too, so thank you.
Yes, and thank you for the learning. And with that being said, I hope everyone else has a good staff conference for the remaining sessions. But if there aren't any other questions, we have 4 minutes to spare that can get you a water, a quick bathroom break before you have to go to your next session.
I
So
think
we
this
hope
is
to
the
see you.
last, isn't this the last one for the day? The 2 o'clock session is it? Do we have
Is
anything
this the
else?
last one? It
I
might
think
be.
so. So y'all have
Oh,
a break until we get back to it tomorrow. So
awesome.
we will see you
Until
all tomorrow morning.
tomorrow.
Our
Yes.
keynote speaker starts at 9.
Yes.
So hopefully we'll see you all then. Have a fabulous evening. And Grace, thank you so much. Grace, my
You're so
wonderful
welcome.
moderator. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Have a good one, everyone. Thank you.